Welcome to my channel, the hidden drama where real-life stories unfold and every situation has a lesson. Some will surprise you, some will make you think, and some might feel closer to home than you expect. Now let's get into today's story. My son married a woman who made him cut me off completely. He changed his number, blocked my emails, and said I was dead to him. On his daughter's first birthday, I sent a gift that made him drive across the state in the middle of the night. I'm looking at the envelope again, turning it over in my hands like if I stare at it long enough the words will change. They don't. You're dead to me, Mom. That's what Adrian said the last time I saw him standing in my doorway, his new wife Leela beside him with her arms crossed, and that calm, cold expression she always wore around me. I remember how the porch felt under my feet that day, the way the wood creaked when I stepped forward to hug him and he stepped back. Away from me. Like I was contagious. Adrian, please, can we just talk about this? I had begged, and God, I hate that I begged. I've never been the begging type. I raised that boy by myself after his father left when Adrian was 6. I worked double shifts at the hospital, picked him up from school every single day even when my feet were screaming, helped him with every homework assignment, drove him to every baseball practice. I was there, I was always there. Maybe that was the problem. There's nothing to talk about, Leela had said, speaking for him like she always did. We've made our decision. We need space, Rowan. Space, such a clean, therapeutic word for cutting your own mother out of your life like a tumor. Adrian, look at me, I had said, ignoring Leela completely. You're really going to let her do this? You're really going to choose her over your own mother? And that's when he said it. Those words that still wake me up at night. You're dead to me, Mom. Then the door slammed and I stood there on that porch for what felt like hours, the neighborhood going quiet around me, the sun setting behind the trees we planted together when he was 12. I tried calling him the next day and the call went straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. I sent emails. They bounced back with automatic replies. I even tried messaging him on Facebook and discovered he'd blocked me there too. My own son had erased me from his life with the efficiency of deleting a spam folder. That was 14 months ago. I'm not proud of how I handled things before that. I know I called too much. I know I showed up unannounced at their apartment more times than I should have. I know I had opinions about everything from the furniture they bought to the groceries in their refrigerator to how Leela folded the towels wrong. But that's what mothers do, isn't it? We care. We help. We make sure our children don't make the same mistakes we did. Except Adrian didn't see it as helping. He saw it as controlling. And Leela, she saw it as a threat. I found out about the baby through my cousin Janet, who somehow still had contact with Adrian's wife's sister's Facebook page. That's how far removed I was from my own son's life. I had to play telephone through distant relatives to learn I had a granddaughter. Iris, they named her Iris. I cried when Janet told me, sitting in my kitchen with cold coffee between us. I cried because it's a beautiful name and because I would never get to hold her or smell that baby's smell or watch her learn to walk. I cried because my son was a father now and I wasn't allowed to be a grandmother. That's when I started planning. Not revenge, exactly. I'm not a vengeful person despite what Adrian might think, but I am a strategic person. I am a person who understands leverage and timing and how to get people's attention when they refuse to listen. The bracelet had been in my jewelry box for 20 years, waiting. My mother Margaret had given it to me before she died, and she told me to give it to my granddaughter someday. It was sterling silver, delicate, with tiny engraved flowers and a nameplate that could be customized. I had it engraved with Iris's full name at the jeweler downtown, and the man behind the counter smiled when he handed it back to me. Beautiful piece for a lucky girl, he'd said. If only he knew she'd never meet the woman giving it to her. But the bracelet was just part 1. Part 2 was the document. I'd been to see my lawyer Thomas twice about this. You want to transfer the house into a trust for a 1-year-old? He had asked, looking at me over his reading glasses like I'd lost my mind. Yes, I said simply. But you're only 58, Rowan. You could live another 30 years. Where will you live? I hadn't thought that far ahead, honestly. I just knew I needed something that would make Adrian come back, something he couldn't ignore. The house was worth about $400,000 in this market, the same house where Adrian grew up, where his height marks still scarred the kitchen doorframe, where his handprint was still pressed into the concrete of the back patio from when he was 8. I'll figure it out, I told Thomas. Just draw up the papers. It took 6 weeks to finalize everything. The house legally belonged to Iris Hale now, held in trust until she turned 25. Adrian wasn't the executor. Leela wasn't either. I'd named Janet as trustee because she was the only family member who still spoke to both sides. I packaged everything carefully. The bracelet went into a small velvet box, the trust documents went into a manila envelope, and I wrote a card, just a simple white card with a border of painted irises. For Iris, open tonight. That's all it said. I mailed it 3 days before her first birthday. I knew they still lived at the same address across the state, about a 4-hour drive from me. I knew because I'd driven past their apartment complex twice in the last year, just to see where my son lived now, just to feel closer to the life he'd built without me. I'm not proud of that either. The package was set to arrive on her actual birthday. I imagined Leela opening the door, seeing the return address label with my name, her face tightening the way it always did when she thought about me. I imagined her bringing it inside and showing Adrian. I imagined him staring at that box the way I was staring at this envelope now. What I didn't imagine was him driving through the night to confront me, but that's exactly what he did. The headlights swept across my living room wall at 17 minutes past 2 in the morning. I was still awake, sitting in the armchair by the window where I'd been sitting for hours, unable to sleep, unable to stop wondering if he'd opened it yet. The doorbell didn't ring. Instead, I heard his key in the lock, the same key I'd never asked him to return, and suddenly he was standing in my living room looking like he'd aged 5 years in the 14 months since I'd seen him. His hair was longer, touched with grey at the temples. He'd lost weight, but his eyes were the same, those dark eyes he got from his father, and right now they were burning with something between rage and desperation. "Where is it?" he demanded, not even bothering with hello. My heart was hammering, but I kept my voice steady. "You drove all this way, you should sit down, sweetheart. Don't call me that." His voice cracked despite the anger, and I could hear the little boy in it, the child who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. "Where's what, Adrian?" I asked, even though I knew. "You know exactly what, the house paperwork, the deed. Whatever game you're playing, Mom, it ends now." I stood up slowly, my knees aching because I'd been sitting too long. I picked up the envelope from the coffee table where I'd left it, almost like an offering on an altar. "This." He crossed the room in 3 strides and snatched it from my hands. His fingers were shaking as he tore it open. I watched his face as he read, watched the anger shift to confusion, watched his eyebrows pull together the way they always did when he was trying to solve a problem. "You transferred the house," he said slowly. It wasn't a question. "Into a trust for Iris." "Yes." "Why?" The question hung in the air between us. I could smell the night air on him, cold and sharp. I could see dried coffee on his shirt collar and realized he'd probably been up feeding the baby when he opened my package. "Because I might never meet her," I said quietly. "Because you told me I was dead to you, and dead people don't hold property. This is manipulation." He threw the papers on the couch. "This is you trying to control me again, trying to force your way back into my life." "Yes, I didn't see the point in lying. But you came anyway." He laughed, but it was a bitter sound with no humor in it. "Of course I came. You sent my daughter a piece of jewelry and legal documents about a house worth $500,000. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to remember that I'm still your mother." My voice was rising now, and I couldn't stop it. "You were supposed to remember that I spent 33 years raising you, loving you, sacrificing for you, and 1 year with her was enough to make you throw all of that away." "1 year?" Adrian's voice went sharp. "Mom, it wasn't 1 year, it was my entire life. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up with you? Every decision I made you questioned. Every friend I had you investigated. Every girlfriend I brought home you found something wrong with. You didn't want me to go to college out of state. You cried when I moved into my own apartment at 25. You called me 4 times a day when I started dating Leela. 4 times a day, Mom. Because I cared about you. Because you couldn't let go." He was packing now, the way he used to pace when he was studying for exams. "Leela didn't make me cut you off. I wanted to, I needed to. I'd been trying to set boundaries for years, and you steamrolled over every single one. So you married someone who told you to abandon your mother. She told me to save myself." His voice dropped. "She told me it was okay to have my own life. She told me your love wasn't supposed to hurt this much." That landed like a slap. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I never hurt you. You suffocated me." He stopped packing and looked at me directly. "And even now, even after more than a year of no contact, you still found a way to manipulate me. You used my daughter to get me here. I used my granddaughter to see my son. She's not your granddaughter if you're not in her life." The words were meant to wound, and they did. I sat back down in my chair because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. "The bracelet was my mother's," I said quietly. "She wanted me to give it to my granddaughter someday. I'm just honoring her wishes. And the house, also for Iris, everything I have is for her now. You made it very clear you don't want anything from me." Adrian rubbed his face with both hands, and I could see how tired he was, how bone-deep exhausted. "This doesn't change anything," he said finally. "You can't buy your way back into my life. I'm not trying to buy anything. The house is Iris's, not yours, not Leela's. It belongs to my granddaughter. You've never even met her. And whose fault is that?" My voice was sharp now, all the hurt and anger from the past year suddenly flooding out. "I wasn't invited to your wedding. I wasn't told about the pregnancy. I wasn't asked to be in the delivery room. I found out about her birth 3 days after it happened through a Facebook post from someone I barely know. You took everything from me, Adrian. Every milestone, every moment, every memory I should have had with you and your family. So yes, I sent a package. Yes, I wanted you to come here. Because if I'm dead to you, then at least I can be useful to your daughter." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Adrian was staring at the floor, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. "You haven't changed," he said finally. "You're still the same person who can't see past her own needs. And you're still my son who I love more than anything in this world. That kind of love is exhausting, Mom." He looked at me then and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, not anger, not even frustration, just sadness, deep, resigned sadness. "It's always been exhausting." He left just before sunrise, taking the bracelet with him but leaving the trust documents spread across my couch. I watched his taillights disappear down the street and felt the same emptiness I'd felt when he slammed the door 14 months ago. The house felt bigger somehow, quieter. I made coffee I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table looking at Adrian's height marks on the doorframe. 4 feet 2 inches when he was 8, 5 feet 6 inches when he was 13. 6 feet even when he was 16. Each mark a memory, a moment, a year of his life that I'd been present for. I didn't sleep that night or the next day. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, turning it over and over like a puzzle I couldn't solve. Had I really suffocated him? Was my love really that damaging? I'd thought I was being a good mother, involved, caring, present. How had that become the very thing that drove him away? 3 days passed in a fog. I called in sick to work, which I never do. I'm a nurse and we don't get sick, we power through because patients need us. But I couldn't face anyone, couldn't plaster on a professional smile and take blood pressure readings and pretend everything was fine when my entire world had fallen apart for the second time in just over a year. On the 4th day, I checked my email out of habit more than hope. There was the usual spam, a message from Janet asking how I was doing, a reminder about my dentist appointment, and then at the bottom of the inbox, a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. I almost deleted it thinking it was junk mail, but something made me click it open. The message was a single sentence. "You can meet her, but only if you follow our rules." I read it 3 times, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the mouse. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was from Adrian, or maybe Leela, probably Leela. The woman who'd been the architect of my exile was now offering me a pardon, but on her terms, of course on her terms. My first instinct was to respond immediately, to write back, "Yes, anything, I'll do anything," to show them how desperate I was to be part of my granddaughter's life. But I stopped myself, sat back, breathed, because responding immediately would prove Adrian right. It would prove I was still the same person who couldn't control herself, who acted on impulse, who pushed too hard. I waited 2 hours. It was the longest 2 hours of my life. Then I typed 2 words. "I'll try." That was 5 days ago. Since then I've heard nothing. No response to my email, no phone calls, no texts, just silence again, but this time it feels different. This time it feels like waiting instead of abandonment. I've been thinking a lot about what Adrian said, about suffocation, about boundaries, about the difference between love and control. I'd always thought they were the same thing, that caring for someone meant being involved in every aspect of their life. But maybe that was my flaw all along. Maybe I never learned where I ended and my son began. My mother Margaret was distant, cold. She worked constantly, and when she was home she was tired and uninterested in the details of my life. I swore I'd be different. I swore I'd be present and engaged and interested. But I went too far in the opposite direction. I became so present I was smothering. So engaged I was intrusive. So interested I was invasive. And now here I am, 58 years old, sitting in a house that doesn't belong to me anymore, waiting for permission to meet my granddaughter. The irony isn't lost on me. I made myself dead to my son by trying too hard to stay alive in his life. But I hit send on that email and I meant what I said. I'll try. I'll try to respect their boundaries even when every instinct in my body screams to push past them. I'll try to be the kind of grandmother Iris deserves instead of the kind of mother Adrian couldn't handle. I'll try to change, even though change at my age feels like trying to teach an old dog to speak French. The trust is real. The house really does belong to Iris now. Thomas warned me about this, told me I was making a mistake, told me I'd regret giving up my security. But it's the only thing I have left to give that means anything. Not money or guilt or manipulation. Just this house where Adrian grew up, this place full of memories both good and bad, this foundation that I'm hoping might somehow build a bridge back to my son. I wake up every morning and check my email first thing. Nothing yet. I go to work and focus on my patients and try not to think about a 1-year-old girl I've never met who has my mother's bracelet now. I come home to this big empty house and make dinner for one and wonder what Iris likes to eat, if she started walking yet, if she has Adrian's dark eyes or Leela's blonde hair. The waiting is its own kind of torture, but it's also a test. Can I wait? Can I be patient? Can I let them come to me instead of forcing my way to them? Every day that passes without me showing up at their door unannounced is a small victory. Every email I don't send demanding answers is progress. Every phone call I don't make is proof that maybe, just maybe, I can learn to be different. Last night I had a dream about Iris. She was older, maybe 5 or 6, running through my backyard chasing fireflies. I was sitting on the porch watching her, not hovering, not correcting, just watching. And she looked back at me and smiled, this pure, uncomplicated smile, and called out, "Grandma, look." And I waved back, just waved. Didn't rush to her or tell her to be careful or worry about mosquito bites or any of the 1,000 concerns that usually flood my mind. I just sat there and let her be a child having a moment of joy. When I woke up, my pillow was wet and I realized I'd been crying in my sleep. But they weren't sad tears exactly. They were complicated tears. Grief and hope and regret and possibility all mixed together. I still don't know if Adrian will actually let me meet Iris. That email could have been a moment of weakness that he's already regretted. Leela might have talked him out of it. They might have decided that the risk of letting me back in isn't worth whatever benefit I could provide to their daughter. And if that happens, if I never hear from them again, then I'll have to find a way to live with that. The house will still belong to Iris. That part can't be undone. When she turns 25, she'll get the deed, and maybe by then Adrian will have told her about me. Maybe she'll come find me, this old woman who loved her from a distance. Or maybe she'll sell it without a second thought, without ever knowing the history contained in these walls. Either way, I kept my mother's wish. I gave something to my granddaughter. But here's what I'm learning in these quiet days of waiting. The revenge I thought I was planning wasn't really revenge at all. It was desperation. It was a last-ditch effort by a woman who'd lost everything to claw back some connection to her only child. And it worked in a way. Adrian came back, even if just for one night. We talked, really talked, maybe for the first time in years. He told me truths I didn't want to hear. I told him truths he already knew. And nothing was fixed, but at least it was honest. The real revenge, if you can call it that, is going to be on myself. Revenge on all the patterns and habits and instincts that drove my son away. Revenge on the part of me that thinks love means control. Revenge on the mother I was, so I can become the grandmother Iris might actually want to know someday. It's almost 9 in the morning now. I need to get ready for my shift at the hospital. Mrs. Patterson in room 312 will be waiting for me. She's 84 and has no family left and always wants to talk about her cats. Usually I find her exhausting, the way she goes on and on about their eating habits and sleeping spots and the funny things they do. But today I think I'll actually listen, really listen without checking my watch or cutting her off or steering the conversation somewhere else, because maybe that's where this starts, not with grand gestures or legal documents or expensive jewelry, but with small moments of actually being present without trying to control the outcome. I check my email one more time before I leave for work. Still nothing from Adrian, but that's okay. I can wait. I'm learning to wait, and who knows? Maybe tomorrow there will be a message, maybe next week, maybe next month. Or maybe one day years from now I'll get a knock on my door if I'm even still living here, and it'll be a young woman with dark eyes and a silver bracelet asking if I'm her grandmother. And I'll say, "Yes, I am, I've been waiting for you." But I won't grab her hand or pull her inside or overwhelm her with questions and years of pent-up love. I'll just smile, and wait, and let her decide what comes next, because that's what I'm learning to do now. I'm learning that sometimes love means letting go. Even when every cell in your body is screaming to hold on tighter. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.